Hello BookTube, I'm Roz and this is my channel, A Journey Through Books, set in the land of frustrations. Yes, I was supposed to film this last weekend and then we got hit with stage 3 load shedding. 9 hours a day without electricity for a whole week. It threw me behind with setting tests, it threw me behind with prepping lessons, and unfortunately it threw me behind with making this video. Without electricity, I'm afraid not much happens because I can't even charge my phone. And my laptop battery died. It only works when it's connected to the power. So, frustrations, frustrations, frustrations. But here you get the video at long last. Let's hope that it goes easily. I have written down some answers. So, the first question is from Eleanor Macradina. And unfortunately, I jotted this one down by hand, so I haven't got her entire line, but she said she's curious about my childhood and education, especially the extracurricular stuff, like painting and learning to play the piano. Okay, well, this is a good place to start because it's pretty much right at the very beginning. So I had pretty much the ideal childhood. I had fantastic parents, and I was living in a world that is a lot safer than the one that I'm living in at the moment. So my friends and I could hop on our bicycles during the holidays and cycle down to the beach and spend the day there in the sun before, skin cancer was really such a big thing, and pretty much have a real good time of it. We could be dropped off at shopping centres. There was no concern about whether there was going to be robbery, etc. Nobody was going to mug us for our bicycles if we cycled there. It was pretty much an awesome lifestyle, and so holidays were loaded with outings and adventures. I was also part of the Girl Guides and Ranger Guides, so we used to do a lot of hiking. We did mountain climbing, abseiling, camping. We built rafts out of wood, filled them with plastic drums and rode up rivers, and I mean, it was a very, very enjoyable childhood actually, because there was a lot of stuff that was out of doors and experiences that I look back on now and absolutely am so glad that I had them. And there was also a lot of quiet time, so I did a lot of reading, surprise, and I also did things like karate and kung fu and tai chi. My wrists announced the short span of Aikido that I did, and even now they crack along like popcorn. But so there were things like that. I did chess. As to playing the piano, that was possibly a more traumatic experience. I had terrifying music teachers, and while I practiced enough that even now at almost 41, I can still play most of those pieces just purely on muscle memory alone in my fingers. You put me in the room with my music teacher and the notes used to move on the page. I was terrified, and I used to get beaten up because in those days corporal punishment was allowed by my music books or rulers or whatever was available at hand on a regular basis, until I finally caved in and dropped it. And that was into high school, where I dropped music as a subject, picked up accounting, how boring, but the teacher was great and he didn't hit me, which was awesome. And it was only when I finished school and finished university that I actually picked up playing the piano again. And it's something that I actually regret not continuing, because I really do love classical music and I feel that my life is perhaps a bit less without it. But the nice thing is that I've got the theory, so I can sit down and teach myself. It takes time and practice. I don't have somebody going, well, here's the trick, but I can still, over time figure it out. And, these days YouTube, you can figure out anything you want there. Oh, and painting. I discovered that I could do art pretty well when I was in South Korea. I had very little to do because nobody spoke English. And for my first 2 years, I was in solitary confinement and, well, not, by law, but there was nobody to talk to. And I went and I bought a pack of sketchbooks because I'd always liked the idea of drawing, and there they were so darn cheap that I didn't have the fear of the blank page, and I discovered that I can draw. And I do portraits, and if I get a chance I will pop some up there. I have painted quite a lot because I moved from black and white into acrylic, but I haven't done that in years now, so I am trying to get back into it, unfortunately. So that I think might answer your questions, Eleanor. Moving on to Britta. Britta says, yes, Q&A. It's my pleasure. I would love to hear more about your life outside of BookTube. You're from family to education or job, whatever you feel comfortable telling us. Well, I'm pretty comfy telling anything, actually. I've got nothing to hide, even though I can't say I was necessarily always impressed with my decisions as a young adult. But, okay, family. As I said, I had great parents. My parents would have been married for 48 years this year. My dad passed away in 2012, and I'm only saying that because everybody wonders if my dad, just disappeared from the scene because I don't talk about him. But no, my dad was fantastic. I was a daddy's girl. I used to go and caddy for him on the golf course, and when I got older and wasn't all that keen on pulling the caddy cart, then I used to go and fetch him from the 19th, where his friends used to ply us both with alcohol, making the whole trip rather pointless. My mom is my best friend. We pretty much like the Gilmore Girls, and except my mom wasn't 17 when she had me, just for the record. And then I have a brother, and he has just, well, I feel like saying just recently got married. He's been married for about 7 years now, and he's just recently become a dad. My nephew Alex is the most gorgeous little bundle of love, and he is so cute. That child, he is going to be a heartbreaker. And they have just recently immigrated to New Zealand. So a bit of a sore point there, because I don't think I'm going to be heading off to New Zealand on holiday anytime soon. But who knows what the future holds. Then education. I went to a pretty decent government primary school and high school in my local town, Port Elizabeth. And then I went to Rhodes University in Grahamstown, which at the time was not the easiest university to get into. It was, I suppose the comparison would be Ivy League. And I initially started off studying journalism, but 17-year-old me did not have the maturity that 41-year-old me has. It was about 17 that the bad decisions started happening, by the way. And I just couldn't handle the idea of sitting writing about politics for the rest of my life, because that's pretty much South African journalism, politics or crime. And so I ended up just doing what I loved, which was English and philosophy. And that left a whole big gap called, what the hell are you qualified to do? And I'm not going to carry on from there, because that's going to be answered in another question in a bit. Okay, I was going to try and do these in some kind of an order so that it made sense, but that was just going to put more time onto the making of the video, and who knows if we are going to have electricity again tomorrow. So let me just get this over and done with. So the next comment is by Eleni Nicolina. And Eleni, welcome to my channel. I don't think I remember you in the comments before, so it's nice to hear from you. She starts off with congratulations on 500 subs. Thanks. I didn't expect that to happen. I know everybody says that, but I really didn't expect that to happen. And she says, you live in a country that I would very much like to visit one day, but I can see that it would be quite difficult for me to get there. I live in Greece. What I would like to know, as someone who loves traveling, is if there is a special country you would like to see one day, where you have traveled till now, or if you like traveling at all. And then she goes on to say she enjoys my videos because of my dry sense of humor, my wonderful self-irony, and my great insight to the books. Thank you so much for the compliments. I really appreciate it. It's why I think I keep coming back to YouTube, because it feels like I have an audience, and I love my subscribers, because the comments in my comment field actually make it worthwhile. Otherwise I'd just be talking to my cell phone, which I must admit, thinking about it, is rather embarrassing, especially when there's nobody else in the room. So to answer your questions, is there a country I would like to see one day? And without trying to sound patronizing here, I would really like to go to Greece. And the reason being is that you have a particular singer that, oh man, his voice does things to me. Beautiful things, wonderful things. It's like having my tummy rubbed, you know. Well, not my tummy, but having my dog's tummy rubbed. That thing, it just, I love his voice, Mario Frangulis, but you're going to hear more about him later because he's going to pitch up a bit. He is my favorite artist, and I don't really have a bucket list, but one day I would like to take my mom and I to Greece to go and listen to Mario sing live, and that is definitely one thing I would love to do. I would also love to head back to London. That's one of the places that I've traveled before, and the reason being is that, look, I live in Africa, South Africa, a small little town on top of that too. So we don't have professional stage productions here. If we do, it's generally something very obscure and we hear about it after the fact. I don't know where they advertise these things, but it's not in circles where I hang out. And I would love to just spend a month in England, well, in London, doing the theatre run. Oh, and the bookshops, because there's such a wide selection of books there. I would just love to do that. So, yes. And then I would like to go and see New Zealand too. I have no idea why. No, I do. Well, you know too. My brother's there now, and I have seen photographs of New Zealand, and I am kind of interested. Rather very interested, actually. So have I answered everything? Special country I'd like to see one day, where I've traveled. Okay, so I have traveled to South Korea, London, and many, many international airports, depending on which route my school bought the ticket for when I was working in South Korea. And yes, well, I can't say I enjoy traveling. I enjoy the destination, the long flights, especially to South Korea. It was something like 20 odd hours on an airplane. That part's not as fun. It's a bit overrated. But the actual destination part is great. But I've only ever done that once where I had a friend, and that makes it so much nicer. The majority of the time that I've done traveling, I've been on my own, and you know, you can't even go and take photographs of the place because there is a building. It's not a memory, it's a landmark. You know, you might as well have just bought the postcard. So the one thing I'd like to do traveling in the future is go with someone special. So that would be my mom at this point in time. There's no time for somebody else who's special in my life, unfortunately. Sharon Larson says, what authors, living or dead, would you enjoy discussing their books with and maybe having a drink or two? Come now, let's be honest, it might be 3 or 4. And the first person I thought about is a genuine one for right now is C.J. Sanson. I would really love to have a chat with him. I also put Arthur Conan Doyle. I would love to hear about Sherlock Holmes and the making of Sherlock Holmes and everything that was going on behind the scenes. I mean, this guy killed him off and then had to bring him back by public demand. So that I think alone would be interesting. And then Terry Pratchett. I think Terry Pratchett's sense of humor is fantastic. I also love the fact that it's the only book series out there where you can read grammar jokes. And I just love that. And then an author who is more than just an author, and I would probably be so intimidated that I would probably sound like an idiot, is Stephen Fry. I think that man would be fascinating to talk to about anything. And I think he would just be an exceptionally interesting guest. And yeah, so those would be my choices for authors, living or dead. There are probably tons more. Yeah, I don't know what kind of questions I would ask. I mean, there's so many things, but at the same time, you know, would I just sit there completely at a loss for words? It's a possibility. It really is. And I hope I don't leave disappointed. Then, oh, Lillian, I'm going to butcher your name, your surname at least. So the next one is Lillian Wyndham, and she says, hi, Roz. Hi, Lillian. This is so great. An opportunity to learn more about you is always welcome. My question is, who is your favorite composer and what opera heroine do you identify with? So the first thing I need to make a confession is that I think I'm kind of misled, Lillian, into thinking that I liked opera in general. I live in Africa. I don't know any of the storylines. I know some of the songs, and unfortunately I don't know any of the heroines or the storylines or anything. So I gave Lillian the option to ask another question, and she said she'd stick with the composer. So I'm going to talk about my favorite composers. Now, if I have to listen to music, look, I like quiet music. what I consider painful is last Saturday night, where we did not have a power outage. How's that for luck? But, you know, Murphy's Law playing out full blast there. But we had the Valentine's Ball, and man, that's my idea of 5 hours of torture. Listening to that for 5 hours. Oh my dear, I was climbing the walls with my teeth. But anyway, so I like gentle music. For listening, I would probably choose somebody like Mozart, where it's calm. But for playing the piano, it's Beethoven, which is not. But it's because it's more fun. So Beethoven has so much contrast in his music, where you have the happy little frilly pieces, and then you have what sounds like a funeral march in the middle of a war. And I just really enjoy bashing that out, or at least I should say I did enjoy bashing that out. I haven't played the piano properly in years, and so when I do sit down to it, it no longer sounds like Beethoven intended. It doesn't sound like most people intended. It's just one step away from making my ears bleed, but you know, maybe one day I'll get back into it again. I really hope I do, actually, because I used to find it so calming and relaxing. Nowadays it's just stressful because it's just not working right. But as for modern composers, I like David Foster, James Newton Howard, Howard Shaw, John Williams. Mostly your classical composers for movie themes. They make brilliant background for absolutely anything, really. Sitting writing, I used to write to them. Now I can set exam papers to them. And yeah, and then just as an extra on the side, so my favorite singers are Mario Frangoulis, which you already know now, Andrea Bocelli. I enjoy Josh Groban, but he's not my favorite. There's some by Nathan Pancero, is that right? Oh, good Lord, I don't read his name, I just click. That I also really enjoy. Anything that's tenorish, I really love. Like Nessun Dorma by Pavarotti, I mean, that is just chilling. I get goosebumps every time, and I've heard it hundreds of times, but nobody can sing Nessun Dorma like Pavarotti could. Anyway, moving on. Mel's Bookland Adventures asks, if you could have a new career without needing to train for it, think fairy with wand, what would you do? Oh, Mel, you have no idea how much I wish sometimes that fairy with a wand would arrive. It's actually something that I am thinking about as well, because although I'm enjoying my new school and the kids are way much better, I am kind of missing out on having a life at the moment, because everything is just work. I mean, normal jobs, you go to work and you knock off at 5 and, you know, work stays at the office, whereas school, you knock off at whatever time you finished with extramurals. I mean, last Thursday I came home at 10:30 at night for the first time, and I left for work before 7 in the morning. And, you know, I still have to then come home and prep lessons for the next day, and you know, burnout is getting pretty damn near, and it's February, it's not December yet, where we closed for the year. But yeah, so I would probably be in something either with publishing, which I suppose is something I could still do, and I have been thinking of, or else graphic design or computer animation. Anything that's basically quiet, alone, no teenagers, although this bunch is not bad, and preferably something creative, either with the computer or with the written word. But then technically my dream has been to be a novelist since I was 5, but I'll get more into that a bit later. But if you happen to find that fairy, Mel, send her my way, please. I could do with maybe a change in scenery. Then Brian's Bookshelf said, hi Roz. Hi Brian. I was going to ask about bookshops in South Africa, but someone below already asked that. If you could have one actor, one musician or singer, and one writer to a dinner party, who would you invite? Okay, so we all know who the musician or singer is going to be, because it's going to be Mario Frangoulis. Have you caught on that I really like him? Unless we've got Disturbed singing Sounds of Silence. Just saying. But it's only that song. Okay, by them. One actor, I thought I'd go with Alan Rickman. I think he would be fascinating. I've heard Alan Rickman talking in interviews, and he sounds like he was a very wise man, a very interesting man. And then the writer I would probably invite would be Neil Gaiman. And I have a very mixed feelings about Neil Gaiman. Well, I don't know if I have mixed feelings. I love listening to Neil Gaiman talk. I can sit and listen to his interviews on YouTube, his speeches. I can listen to his advert for the writing course. I did. Can you tell? I just love listening to that man talk, and I would love to have him for a dinner party. And the reason why I say I have mixed feelings is that I read every book that Neil Gaiman writes, and I think I enjoy it. But I don't know if I'm being biased because I really like him talking, or if I really actually like his books. I don't know. I can't actually separate the two in my mind. So, but yes, that would be my choice. The only problem with this party is that I would want everybody to shut up to hear Mario, but I would want to hear both Alan Rickman and Neil Gaiman. And I'm not too sure how those two would get on, but then hey, it's my party. I can invite who I want to. Anyway, next up was Amy Anders. And okay, Amy first picked me out for saying I was boring. Okay, so maybe I'm not really boring per se, but I think my life at the moment is pretty boring because it is work. And then I come home from work and I work. And then I drop into the shower so that I don't stink the next day. And then I climb into bed, first with a bit of work, set work that I need to read and prep for the next day. And then if I'm still awake, I pick up a book to read for me. And that's my life. That's every day. Saturdays and Sundays sometimes, well, not Sundays, but Saturdays there's still sometimes school commitments that I still have to attend, like last Saturday's Valentine's Ball that wasn't zapped by ESCOM, the power of darkness here. But anyway, you get the idea. So apologies, I'm not necessarily boring, but I feel that my life is pretty boring at the moment because I'm not living a life. I am having a job. So moving on. She says, I always find it, oh wait, am I jumping lines here? Okay, let me think about a question. I always find that so difficult because I can't come up with anything specific. I just want to know everything. I completely relate. Every time my favorite booktubers have put out Q&As, I sit there going, I really want to ask something, but I just don't know what. And so she says, in one of your latest videos, you mentioned living in South Korea. I'm curious to know how you ended up there and if there are any other places in the world where you temporarily or permanently would want to live. So I ended up in South Korea. As I said, I got a BA degree in English and philosophy. And according to one of the many people that I've worked for in my life before I became a teacher, I was qualified to be a bartender. And I felt that that was rather an expensive qualification for something that most people can do without even high school. So, I mean, the biggest restriction on being a bartender is that you're over the drinking age, which here is 18. And I ended up in Cape Town trying to find work, and that wasn't really happening because I ended up working in a bar so that I could afford, actually 2 bars, so that I could afford my rent, and I didn't even have an opportunity to really go and find something else. And in case you think that's a dumb excuse, it actually wasn't. I worked in a nightclub from 7 at night until 7 in the morning, and then I worked at at an English pub from 10 in the morning through until 4 in the afternoon, or 5 depending. So I used to drive from there to the next job, crash in my car and sleep for 2 hours, and then go to work for 12 hours and then come home and die. It was wash, rinse, repeat. I didn't really have time to go and find a job, and I couldn't afford the petrol to drive all the way to the other end of Cape Town because Cape Town's massive. So my brother's girlfriend at the time, her sister was teaching in South Korea, and all you needed was a degree to go. And I thought, you know what, bugger it, I'm going to do that. And I did. And that was the beginning of me becoming a teacher. So yeah, that was how I ended up in South Korea. And other places where I'd like to live. Look, we're living in a little bit of an unsteady political climate at the moment. There is talk about land reclaim without compensation, which is concerning, especially if you look at Zimbabwe. The exchange rate is dropping through the floor pretty much as we speak. Again, crime is through the roof. We don't have electricity reliably. We don't have water. I mean, Grahamstown, where my university is literally out of water. There is nothing coming out the taps. So there are days where I'm quite prepared to go anywhere, except maybe Zimbabwe. But I wouldn't mind Australia, New Zealand. I know that Australia is apparently very similar to South Africa. New Zealand, I now have my brother there and my nephew and my sister-in-law, and that would also be pretty cool. I wouldn't mind going to England either, except I wouldn't want to teach there. So, but as I said, you know, some days anywhere sounds better. But then, as they say, the grass is greener. Is that just because there's more fertilizer on the lawn? Well, I'm going to have to cut this here and make this a two-part video. I have run out of space on my phone and I have run out of battery life as well. Well, I've got 10% remaining, which means that I need to speak very quickly. So I will be uploading the second part very soon, and I hope you enjoy it. Bye for now.